I gave my stepmother a Mother's Day gift she'll never forget, because it told her the truth. When Rachel Carter was just 11, she lost her mother to melanoma. One day it was a headache, the next, doctors, hospital rooms, and finally, a black dress that still had the price tag dangling from it. 2 days after that first symptom, she was standing at her mother's grave, trying to understand how her world could fall apart so fast. Exactly 13 months later, her father, Mark, brought home Vanessa, a polished woman from his investment firm. Blonde hair, flawless smile, high heels at backyard barbecues. "She makes me happy again," Mark said gently. "I need you to try Rachel." And so she did. She helped Vanessa move in, stacking designer heels into the closet where her mom's gardening boots used to sit. She stayed quiet when the house was redecorated, the family photos replaced by abstract art. Even when Vanessa turned her mom's vegetable garden into a trendy meditation patio, Rachel only smiled. For the next 3 years, she became the perfect stepdaughter. Polite, obedient, quiet. Vanessa's friends praised her maturity. Her dad never noticed when Rachel stopped laughing. Vanessa tried to play the role of mom. She bought lavish birthday gifts and told strangers Rachel was or daughter. But Rachel still had to Google what to do when she got her first period. She clutched her dog during nightmares instead of waking up Vanessa. She hid her grief behind perfect grades and fake smiles while her father lost himself in wine clubs and charity events with his new wife. Rachel accepted her mother was gone, but it wasn't until she found her mom's old journal, hidden in an antique jewelry box, that she realized her mother might have known everything. And what came next would change not only Rachel's life, but her family's legacy forever. Rachel Carter became a ghost in her own home. On the surface, she was everything a father could ask for: smart, polite, well-dressed, the picture of a respectful teenager. But behind the careful smiles and flawless report cards was a girl who felt more like a prop in someone else's life than a person with her own. Vanessa, her stepmother, didn't scream or scold. She didn't hit or insult. No, Vanessa was far more subtle than that. Her cruelty came in the form of indifference, of carefully calculated exclusion. Rachel was praised when it benefited Vanessa's image, dressed in designer clothes she never chose, paraded around at corporate galas where guests would smile and say, "She's so poised for her age," and then forget her name by dessert. Home didn't feel like home anymore. Her bedroom was the only place that still looked the way it did when her mom was alive. Even then, the walls felt thinner, like the warmth her mother had once filled the space with had been scrubbed away by cold fingers and lavender, scented candles. Vanessa had turned their backyard garden into a pristine patio with white furniture and wind chimes. Pretty, but sterile. The wildflowers her mom used to love, gone. Rachel's father, Mark, didn't seem to notice. Or maybe he didn't want to, he was always busy. Work trips, wine tastings, weekend retreats with Vanessa. He never asked about the dark circles under Rachel's eyes, never wondered why his daughter no longer laughed at his corny jokes. His attention belonged to Vanessa now, and Vanessa's attention belonged to status, networking, and control. Rachel learned early that her pain had no place in this new family. She cried quietly at night, holding her mother's old sweater under her pillow until the scent faded. When she got her period for the first time, it was Google that told her what to do. She sat in the school bathroom for 20 minutes, trying to figure it out, because there was no one at home she could ask. Not anymore. She had nightmares, vivid ones where her mom was calling out for help, or worse, just staring at her in silence, eyes full of warning she didn't understand. Each time, it was their golden retriever, Max, who came to her side, never Vanessa, never her dad. Vanessa tried, in her own way, to create the illusion of a happy home. She hosted elaborate dinner parties, made sure Rachel had the best of everything: private tutors, college counselors, exclusive workshops. But every gift Vanessa gave seemed like something she would have wanted herself: handbags, shoes, a spa package for a 15-year-old girl. Never anything Rachel actually liked. And always with an audience. The more Rachel tried to be what they wanted, the more invisible she became. It didn't matter that she made the honor roll every semester. It didn't matter that she played the piano at her school recital or that she cleaned up the kitchen after Vanessa's parties without being asked. Her dad barely said, "Good job." Vanessa just smiled for photos and called her "sweet girl" in front of guests. Things came to a head during Rachel's sophomore year when she was cast as the lead in the school play. For the first time in years, she felt alive. Rehearsals gave her something to look forward to. Her teachers noticed her energy shift. Even Max seemed to pick up on the difference. But when opening night approached, Vanessa crushed it without blinking. "You'll need to skip the performance," she said while scrolling on her phone. "The Richardson family will be at the gala, and their son's at Princeton." Connections, Rachel. Mark started to say something, maybe even to defend her. But Vanessa touched his arm, and just like that, he backed down. "It's just a school play," he said. "There'll be others." Rachel didn't argue. She just went upstairs, locked the door, and cried into the journal she hadn't touched it since her mom passed. That night, she finally opened it and read every single page. In that moment, something shifted. She wasn't just sad anymore. She was angry, not just at Vanessa, but at her father too. At herself for staying silent. And at the life she'd been forced to play along with. What she discovered inside that journal would not only give her answers. It would light a fire that had been waiting to burn for 3 long years. The journal Rachel opened that night didn't just contain her mother's memories. It was a map. A quiet voice from the grave, guiding her toward the truth. Most of the entries were what she expected: warm recollections, words of advice, hopes for her future. But the final entry, written just 2 weeks before her mother's death, was different. It began with 7 simple words. "If you're reading this, I'm sorry." Her hands trembled as she flipped the page. Taped to the inside cover was a small silver key. Her mother had written about a safe deposit box at First National Bank and urged Rachel to go there alone when she was ready. She'd promised that what she'd find inside would explain everything. The next morning, Rachel skipped school for the first time in her life. The bank manager recognized her immediately. "Your mother told us you might come someday," he said quietly, and led her to the vault. The box was heavy. Inside were legal folders, a USB drive, and a sealed envelope with her name on it, written in her mother's unmistakable handwriting. She read the letter first. In it, her mother revealed the unimaginable truth. She had discovered Mark's affair with Vanessa 6 months before her diagnosis. The betrayal was heartbreaking. But it wasn't just about infidelity. Her mom had hired a private investigator to uncover the full story, and the findings were devastating. The report was thorough, spanning months of deceit. Photos of Mark and Vanessa at hotels while Rachel's mom was picking her up from soccer practice, love notes, text messages. One text from Mark chilled Rachel to the bone. "Sometimes I wish she would just disappear." But there was more. Rachel's mother had found evidence that Mark and Vanessa were siphoning money from the Carter family trust. Money meant for Rachel's future. Her mother came from a powerful legacy. Her family had built one of the largest investment firms in the city, and when she married Mark, he was an ambitious advisor with no fortune of his own. She had brought him into the business, mentored him, and eventually made him a partner. The trust fund had been carefully structured to protect Rachel's inheritance. But once her mother became ill, Mark and Vanessa began moving money, slowly, strategically, through offshore accounts, shell companies, and fraudulent investments. Detailed spreadsheets tracked the funds, showing millions vanishing from Rachel's future, reappearing under names she didn't recognize. Rachel was horrified, but nothing prepared her for what came next: medical records and personal notes from her mother indicating she believed she was being poisoned. She had started feeling sick shortly after an anniversary dinner Mark had prepared himself. At first, it was fatigue. Then nausea. Then a rapid decline doctors couldn't explain. She had commissioned her own tests. Hair samples, food analysis, consultations with specialists. The results showed dangerous levels of heavy metals in her system. Signs consistent with long-term poisoning. "I can't prove it," her mother had written. "And by the time you read this, it won't matter for me. But I couldn't leave you unprotected." Rachel sat in the bank's private room for hours, stunned. That night, she wasn't the same girl who had walked in. Her grief had shape now. Her anger had direction. But she didn't run home to confront her father. She didn't tell anyone. Not yet. Instead, Rachel began to prepare. For the next several months, she became the perfect daughter again. But this time, it was a performance. She attended dinners, smiled for pictures, and acted exactly as Vanessa wanted her to. Composed, obedient, predictable, all while building her case. She documented everything. Every conversation, every suspicious document Mark brought home, every financial transaction she could trace. Her bedroom became a war room. She installed a hidden safe behind her bookshelf and filled it with evidence. Photographs, spreadsheets, recordings. She dug into Vanessa's shell companies and Mark's client accounts, uncovering just how deep the fraud had gone. Then, she reached out to the people her mother had trusted most: a retired judge, who was once her grandfather's closest friend, a forensic accountant, and a sharp financial lawyer. They met in secret at the judge's estate. When they reviewed the evidence Rachel had collected, their reactions said it all. The judge's voice was quiet but firm. "Your mother was one of the finest people I've ever known. What do you want to do, Rachel?" And for the first time in years, she answered without hesitation, "I want to take everything back." Rachel Carter didn't want revenge. She wanted precision. After uncovering the truth about her mother's death, the stolen inheritance, and the years of betrayal, she didn't lash out. She didn't scream or cry in front of them. She simply began to prepare for justice. Not the kind delivered in dramatic confrontations, but the slow, quiet, legally airtight kind her mother would have respected. For nearly 2 years, Rachel played the role Vanessa expected of her, the model teenager. She joined every club her stepmother suggested, wore every dress she was given, attended every soul-draining fundraiser. Behind closed doors, though, she was transforming. With the help of her mother's secret allies, a retired judge, a financial crimes attorney, and a forensic accountant, Rachel was building her strategy. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, while Vanessa believed she was attending debate prep or volunteer events, Rachel met in secret with her mother's team. She studied corporate law, forensic accounting, and the complex networks of shell companies her father had created. The judge introduced her to regulators and financial experts who had once worked alongside her mother, and who still felt loyalty to her legacy. Her goal wasn't just to expose the fraud, it was to understand it, to dismantle the machine her father and stepmother had built from the inside. She didn't want to destroy them with rage. She wanted to outsmart them. By the time Rachel turned 16, she had already graduated high school a year early and received a full scholarship to Yale. Mark and Vanessa were ecstatic, thrilled to parade her around as their success story. What they didn't know was that she had also completed advanced coursework in business and finance and quietly assumed legal control of the trust her mother had created just before her death. Vanessa, eager to cement her place in the family's legacy, proposed an adoption. Publicly, dramatically, just before Rachel left for college. "You've always been my daughter in every way that matters," she said at brunch, reaching across the table to take Rachel's hand. "Let's make it official." Rachel smiled, her voice calm. "I'd love that." She didn't flinch when Vanessa told her they'd make the announcement at their upcoming Mother's Day garden party, a lavish event with 30 of their closest social, climbing friends. Rachel simply nodded, already setting the final phase of her plan into motion. For the next week, she worked late in her room, compiling documents, photographs, and timelines. The gift she prepared wasn't wrapped in ribbons. It was bound in leather, embossed in gold with the words "A daughter's gratitude." On the morning of the party, Rachel found Vanessa in her dressing room, fretting over two nearly identical designer dresses. "Chanel or Dior?" she asked, holding them up. "Chanel?" Rachel answered smoothly, knowing Vanessa would instinctively choose the opposite. "I have something for you," she added, handing her the gift box. Vanessa smiled in surprise. Rachel had never given her a Mother's Day present before. "I'll open it during the party," she said. "I'd rather you open it now. It's personal." The shift in Rachel's tone made Vanessa pause. She unwrapped the box and opened the book. The first page was a photo of Rachel's mother, smiling in the garden that Vanessa had torn out. "What is this?" Vanessa asked sharply. Rachel replied. Page by page, Vanessa's carefully constructed world began to crumble. There were receipts, forged signatures, screenshots of messages, financial records detailing years of theft. Her hands began to shake. Her skin grew pale. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she reached the final pages. Proof that the FBI's Financial Crimes Division had a scheduled meeting with Rachel the following day. Vanessa looked up in horror. "You ungrateful little..." Rachel cut her off with a whisper. "Careful. Your guests are watching, and I'm still deciding whether to show them Chapter 3. Downstairs, the party was in full swing. Rachel stood beside Vanessa as she toasted to motherhood, smiled for photos, and clinked champagne glasses with women who didn't know a war had just begun in the dressing room upstairs. That afternoon, Rachel handed her father a copy of the same book. His reaction was different. Calmer, colder. "Where did you get all this?" he asked. "From Mom," Rachel said, along with instructions. His face hardened as he realized how deeply she had planned. "What do you want?" Rachel answered without hesitation. "Tomorrow, 9 a.m., Judge Henderson's office. We'll discuss terms of your freedom." And as the sun set over the pristine patio that had replaced her mother's garden, Rachel walked back inside, leaving her father and stepmother in stunned silence. The storm had arrived, and she was its calm center. Mother's Day dawned clear and bright. Perfect weather for a celebration Vanessa Carter had been planning for weeks. The back patio was transformed into a Pinterest-perfect garden party, complete with white linens, catered hors d'oeuvres, champagne fountains, and professionally arranged bouquets. To the outside world, it was a day to celebrate love and motherhood. But for Rachel Carter, it was the day everything would change. That morning, Rachel dressed with intention. Her look was soft and refined, just the way Vanessa liked to present her. She wore her late mother's pearl earrings, subtle but symbolic. In her hand, she held the gift, a leather-bound book tied with a silver ribbon, its title, elegantly embossed in gold foil, "Read a Daughter's Gratitude." Vanessa, fluttering between table arrangements and wardrobe decisions, barely noticed Rachel slip into her dressing room. "What do you think?" she asked, holding up two cream-colored dresses. "The Dior or the Chanel?" Rachel smiled, her voice calm. "The Chanel." She knew Vanessa would pick the Dior just to assert her own taste. "I have something for you," Rachel said, extending the box. "Oh, you didn't have to," Vanessa replied, genuinely surprised. Rachel had never acknowledged this day before. "I'll open it during the party. It'll be more special." "I'd rather you open it now," Rachel insisted. "It's personal." Something in her tone made Vanessa pause. With a slightly confused frown, she untied the ribbon and opened the book. The first page showed a photograph of Rachel's mother in her garden. Sunlight in her hair, soil on her hands, joy in her eyes. "What is this?" Vanessa asked, her voice suddenly tight. "Keep going," Rachel said softly. Each page that followed was a carefully constructed revelation, photos of Vanessa and Mark during their affair, emails and messages exchanged while Rachel's mother was still alive, bank statements showing funds diverted from Rachel's inheritance, spreadsheets of fake companies and offshore accounts, medical reports suggesting long-term poisoning. By the time Vanessa reached the chapter titled Legal Action Pending, her hand was trembling, her cheeks pale beneath layers of carefully applied blush. "This is absurd," she whispered, flipping through the pages faster now as if she could outrun what was coming. "It's all been reviewed by the team?" Rachel said, her tone still gentle. "The judge, the lawyer, the accountant, and the FBI's Financial Crimes Division meets with me tomorrow morning." "But you already know that part." Vanessa stood up so quickly she knocked over her mimosa. "You ungrateful little..." "Careful," Rachel interrupted, stepping closer. Your guests are watching, and I haven't decided whether to show them chapter 3. Vanessa froze. Downstairs, laughter floated up from the patio, the clink of glasses, the hum of polite conversation. A photographer was already setting up for the announcement. Vanessa's grand plan to reveal that she would be legally adopting Rachel, or daughter, was finally, officially hers. Rachel tilted her head and smiled. Here's what's gonna happen. You're gonna go downstairs, smile for the camera, and host the party. And tomorrow morning, you and Dad will meet me at Judge Henderson's office. We'll discuss the terms of your continued freedom. Vanessa's jaw clenched. This is blackmail. No, Rachel replied. This is justice, with a hint of mercy if you earn it. Rachel left the room without another word, stepping into the sunlit yard where the crowd greeted her with warm applause. She stood beside Vanessa for the entire event, posed for pictures, toasted to motherhood, with a steady smile, and watched her stepmother's hands shake every time someone brought up the adoption. Later, her father arrived from his golf game and found a second gift box waiting in his office. Inside was his own copy of the book, this version including legal memos and internal company documents bearing his signature. When Rachel met him at the door, his face was blank. Where did you get this? He asked quietly. From Mom? She replied. And from the people she trusted when she couldn't trust you. That night, the party ended with fake smiles and tighter than usual hugs. But the real confrontation was yet to come. As Rachel went to bed, she sent one last message to her legal team. The delivery is complete. Tomorrow, we take it all back. The next morning, at precisely 8:05 a.m., Rachel Carter stood in front of Judge Henderson's private office, dressed in the navy suit her mother had bought her for her first academic competition. Her hair was neatly pulled back, her expression calm. In her hand, she carried the Montblanc pen that had once belonged to her grandfather, passed down through 3 generations and returned to her, with purpose, when she chose justice over silence. Her father arrived first. Mark Carter looked older than he had just the night before, his tie slightly crooked, eyes red, rimmed from lack of sleep. Where's Vanessa? Rachel asked, though she already suspected the answer. Gone, he said flatly. Took her car and a suitcase. Left her phone behind so she couldn't be tracked. Rachel said nothing. She had prepared for this scenario. A contingency plan had already been activated the moment Vanessa stepped out the front door. Inside the judge's office, the mood was sterile and cold. Rachel's legal team sat across the polished mahogany table, folders stacked neatly in front of them. The judge reviewed the documents in quiet detail before turning to Mark. You understand the terms? Judge Henderson asked. Mark nodded, his voice barely audible. Yes. And then it began. One by one, Mark signed away everything. The power of attorney, the board voting rights, control over the company's assets. He signed his resignation letter. He initialed every clause confirming that any future obstruction or concealment would trigger immediate criminal charges. Rachel sat silently, watching him crumble, not with pleasure but with finality. When the judge slid the final document across the table, a court order stating that Mark could no longer contact Rachel directly until she turned 18. His hand hesitated. I'm her father, he muttered. Rachel looked him in the eye. You can sign it, or I release the medical evidence. Even if they can't prove intent, it will be enough to open an investigation. His pen moved without another word. The final signature landed with a whisper. The company announcement was crafted carefully. A family succession plan, honoring Rachel's late mother's legacy. Mark would remain as a non-executive figurehead, a title with no power, monitored by quarterly financial reviews Rachel would personally oversee. The public never learned the full truth, but the shift was obvious. Power had changed hands. 3 weeks later, Vanessa was arrested in Miami attempting to access an offshore account. Her fingerprints and retina scan flagged the system Rachel's team had already reported to authorities. She spent 2 nights in custody before cutting a deal. Full cooperation in exchange for limited sentencing and restricted movement. She was returned to Connecticut under supervision, forced to work in a minor role within the company she had once dreamed of controlling. Rachel continued to dismantle the empire her father and Vanessa had built. One shell company at a time. The trust her mother created flourished again under Rachel's leadership. The clients returned, the board stabilized, and the family business reclaimed its reputation. But the emotional reckoning remained unfinished. One night, weeks after Vanessa's return, Rachel found her sitting alone in the backyard, the one she had once transformed into a sterile meditation patio. Now, under Rachel's direction, it had begun to regrow. Native flowers had been replanted. A bench her mother once sat on had been restored. Why now? Vanessa asked quietly, not turning to face her. Why wait so long? Rachel sat beside her, smoothing her skirt. Because I needed to know everything first. I didn't want revenge, I wanted understanding. Control. Vanessa glanced at her sideways. What happens to us now? You return what you took. You stay out of my way. You answer to me and the board, Rachel said, her tone sharp but not cruel. You keep your freedom, as long as you stay useful. A bitter laugh escaped Vanessa's lips. You're just like her, you know. Rachel looked up at the stars. Good. That night, Rachel sent one final message to her team, Phase 1 complete. Justice hadn't come with handcuffs or headlines. It had come with patience, planning, and quiet power, just as her mother would have wanted. 2 months after reclaiming everything that had been stolen from her, Rachel Carter sat alone in the office that used to belong to her father. The view was the same, but the energy was different. Where once there had been arrogance and deception, now there was purpose and clarity. The transition had been announced as a seamless family succession, with glowing press releases celebrating Rachel as the youngest female CEO in the firm's history. Behind the scenes, she was surrounded by her mother's old team, loyal, sharp, and ready to rebuild the company's integrity. Rachel deferred her Yale admission by a year to focus on stabilizing operations. She worked 16-hour days, slept on the office couch, and reviewed every contract, every transaction, every shadow her father had left behind. The house she grew up in didn't feel like home anymore. After 6 months, she sold it and moved into a quiet apartment downtown. Modest, but hers, her father, stripped of his social circle and public standing, lived quietly in the suburbs. They hadn't spoken since signing the final agreement. Vanessa, meanwhile, remained under strict conditions, working in a limited liaison role and living in a company-owned condo under constant oversight. Her influence was gone, her ambition neutralized, and then, one quiet Sunday, Rachel returned to the cemetery for the first time since she had found her mother's journal. She laid a bouquet of wildflowers, just like the ones that used to bloom in their old garden. At the base of the gravestone, "I did what you asked," she whispered. "The company is safe. They'll never touch what's yours again." As she turned to leave, she noticed a woman in the distance, Vanessa, standing still, holding a small bouquet of her own. Their eyes met. No words, just a nod, a quiet acknowledgement of what had passed, and what could never be undone. Since then, every Mother's Day, Rachel sends Vanessa the same thing, a single photograph of her mother, smiling in the garden, with a note that reads, "Thinking of you today." Vanessa never replies. She doesn't have to. Because some gifts aren't meant to be received, they're meant to remind. Sometimes, justice doesn't look like punishment. It looks like reclaiming what was yours all along. Rachel didn't fight for revenge. She fought for clarity, legacy, and truth. And in doing so, she honored her mother not with words, but with action. If you've ever felt silenced, underestimated, or erased, let Rachel's story be your reminder. You don't need to raise your voice to be powerful. Sometimes, the quietest plan is the loudest justice. If this story moved you, leave a comment below. Have you ever taken back control of something that was stolen from you? Your peace, your voice, your legacy. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because we have more stories of resilience, revenge, and redemption you won't want to miss.